How did Bill Gates go from being a Harvard student to living in some of the roughest parts of Albuquerque, New Mexico? And how were his romantic relationships affected by his burgeoning company, Microsoft? I'll be answering all of that and more. But please hit like and subscribe so I can pay my bills. So this was the mid-1970s when disco was raging and bell-bottom pants weren't seen as super tacky. The bespectacled nerd stereotype-looking Bill Gates was studying at Harvard in the early 70s. Taking after his father, who was a prominent lawyer in Seattle, Bill decided to major in pre-law, and yet computers were always his main focus. During his time at Harvard, he developed a reputation as a poker player, often playing large hands late into the night. But he would soon receive a golden opportunity. His former high school classmate, Paul Allen, said they could team up and move to Albuquerque to work with a company called MITS, whom they would make software for. Gates took him up on his offer and dropped out of Harvard in 1975. He moved in with Paul Allen in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And Albuquerque was a rough city. It still is a rough city. Looking at the FBI's uniform crime stats for 2019, the year that it's most recently available, Albuquerque has the highest number of violent crimes when compared with the 100 most populous cities in the US. It's number 1. They checked into and lived at the Sundowner Hotel in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The Sundowner was a cheap spot and would actually later fall into disrepair, being eventually overtaken by squatters, prostitutes, and drug users. In their early partnership, Gates and Allen, they named the company Microsoft and agreed on a 60-40 split, with Gates getting 60% of the company. Paul Allen would later show regret, stating that he wished he argued for a more equal cut of the company. As a recent dropout, Gates was so young back then that he couldn't even rent a car. In an interview with Bloomberg, he described having to take cabs around to meetings in those early days. His status as a young visionary founder came off as untrustworthy and different to the middle-aged professionals in the computing industry, and Gates had to fight to be taken seriously. But even with all of his early successes, we soon learned that things weren't only sunny for the young ascendant millionaire, and his destructive behavior would be evidence of that. In Albuquerque, Bill developed a reputation as being a crazy driver. Gates would sometimes go out at night and drive around at high speeds through the New Mexico desert, just to clear his head and think. Gates, one night, was driving Paul Allen's car in 1977 when he was stopped by the Albuquerque police for speeding. He didn't have a license on him that night. And so he was put in a jail cell with all of the criminals and drunks for the entire night. Paul Allen would have to come bail him out the following morning. Reminiscing on the incident in a 2007 Times Magazine article, Bill says, "And that's why the rest of my life I've always tried to have a fair amount of cash on me. I like the idea of being able to bail myself out." It wouldn't be until 1979 that he would buy his prized Porsche 911. And Gates was a bachelor for most of his time in New Mexico, and there's no evidence of him dating while he was there. His romantic life wouldn't start until he went back to Seattle. In 1979, Microsoft left Albuquerque and moved to Seattle, where they could attract more talent. In 1983, at a party in Seattle's Madison Park neighborhood, Bill met a woman named Jill Bennett. At the party, they hit it off, connecting over mutual interests like tennis, computers, and mutual friends. But after dating for a couple of years, the computer sales rep eventually grew tired of Gates' workaholic lifestyle. He would be tired and couldn't devote any attention to her. Gates' workaholism would mean the downfall of his relationships. And this makes me think about the stories of young founders we read about in the media. It seems so exciting to have a huge company so young. A lot of money is being made, but do you really get a chance to enjoy it? Are your friendships and relationships diminished as a result of your success? And are you happy with outcomes?